Good morning and welcome. We're so excited today to have Laura Bush here, and she is going to be telling us about the way to be able to blast out writer's block. Laura Bush, Ph.D., is a ghostwriter, writing coach, and editor. And before starting her writing business in 2012, she taught composition and literature courses for over 20 years, including at Arizona State University. Although she's published numerous articles and blogs, as well as a groundbreaking book in Western women's autobiography called The Faithful Transgressions in American West, 6 20th Century Mormon Women's Autobiographical Acts.
It's a mouthful. It's a mouthful. Just say faithful transgressions. I know.
She knows very well what it's like to be stuck. And Laura, welcome. I am so excited to have you today because, you know, I've gone through those periods where I'm stuck too. I just have no idea what to write. I feel overwhelmed or unmotivated. And so I'm really excited to hear what you have to share with us.
Good. Well, I'm excited to be here and thank you for having me. And I'm excited to share this with people because I think it's such a common affliction, as you say. And I want to support people in getting through that, blasting through the writer's blocks and understanding why it happens. So let me just share my screen with you and put my slides up on the deck and we'll get started.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay. So the reason that I am sharing this webinar, the information on this webinar, is so you can get going and get finished with whatever writing you're doing. I particularly work with people on writing books, but I also work with them on many other projects. I work with a nonprofit organization on their e-newsletters. I do some ghostwriting for them and work with other kinds of writing, blogging. I talk about blogging your way to a book. So there's all sorts of writing opportunities where people get stuck. Even in an email message that matters to you, you can get stuck for any number of reasons. So Juliet's told you a little bit about me. One thing to know is that I work with people in nonfiction primarily. When I was studying and getting my Ph.D. in English at Arizona State University, and then I went on to teach there as well, I actually specialized in American women's autobiography in particular, that is life writing or memoir, anything like that. And right now I work with people on their nonfiction books. And those people tend to be business owners, entrepreneurs, people who are experts in something and they want to get their message out. And I hold a retreat now in June. It's kind of at the end of June and July that Juliet actually came to this summer, which was awesome. And this is me in the barn. And I'm now calling it Write Your Book in a Barn. Retreats for writers to get unstuck, because it's one of the main things that I actually did and now do, that I see to do, because it kind of came out of this retreat that was one of the biggest values that people got out of it. So this is me here in my great uncle's barn, and it's next to a very famous barn, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a little bit. So writer's block, what is it? It's a common affliction, and I don't want you to be bashing your head against this block. I love how this meme is literalizing writer's block, because that's how it can feel. And there are little nuances to what writer's block is really about, and I'll talk with you about that today. So, does this sound like you? If you are trying to get over a hurdle, like trying to get some momentum going with your writing, if you feel like you're stuck, if your friends have been telling you, you should tell your story and you still aren't telling it, or you're saying something like, I really need to get focused, I need to learn how to make forward, any of those kinds of things, then you are in the right place and you're not alone. So when a writer says, I'll be writing for the next 2 hours, don't bother me, she means I'll be playing solitaire and Bejeweled for 40 minutes. Then I'll stare at my blank screen for 10 minutes. Then I'll check my email, browse through Facebook, and watch cat videos for another 40 minutes before I spend the last 30 minutes cramming in 2,000 words. It's all part of the writing process. I'm sure you can relate to this. Juliet, tell me, what are some of the things that you do that reminds you of this? I check Facebook too. I've got to get on there. I think, I need to post on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and all those things because I'm a business owner before I write. What are some of the kinds of things that you do?
You know what? I don't have it so much anymore. I'm pretty focused right now. But when I do,
Yeah.
I immediately know that I'm overwhelmed. I've gotten to the point where when I'm doing something on Facebook, Facebook, email, I keep checking my email. My big thing is I work out of my home. So all of a sudden, the house needs a complete cleaning so it was cleaned yesterday.
Right.
So
that's so great, because in graduate school, my graduate student friends and I, we would say to each other, I have the cleanest house because I've got to get to writing my dissertation. That's when we had the cleanest house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's
my gig.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite sayings from the internet about the internet. So being a good writer is 3% hard work and 90% not getting distracted by the internet. I think the internet is an amazing resource for writers for a couple of reasons. One, you can do amazing research out there that is the efforts of doing research before were so great. And now you can get some really credible information that adds to your writing, and that you need to fact check. There are all sorts of things like that. Plus, the internet is the place to sell books, especially self-published books, right? So there are all sorts of great things about the internet. And then there are all sorts of ways that the internet can distract you. So writer's block, when your imaginary friends refuse to talk to you. This is just, of course, a funny way of thinking about writer's block. And we have those voices in our heads that we want to use for good. And when they aren't there, or when we perceive that they aren't there for our good in the writing, we get a little concerned or frightened. Now, I have been thinking about this issue for a while now. I have studied composition theory, the research behind how people write, actually. And in that discipline, we actually talk about the writing process, and the writing process being recursive. And I've almost never heard anybody use the term writer's block, even though we experience it. And that's because writers who've studied that know that writing is a process. It starts with invention and then drafting and revising and editing, and it goes kind of zigzag back and forth among those two, like you were hiking up a mountain, zigzag. You go back to drafting, forward to writing. But even though we don't use the term writer's block, it's a really pervasive term. So I'm using it. I talk about people being stuck. And I think that there are actually only two manifestations or forms of it. And I've just actually recently distinguished this for myself as I've been working with clients and looking at it in my own life and how it happened. So I would say the first form of writer's block is just simply procrastination. We delay, we divert, and we distract ourselves in somehow. That's the cleaning, that's the Facebooking, or we divert our attention to our kids or our job, or we just put it off and say, it's not my time to write my book. I will do it when I have got the kids into school, or when I finally am making enough money that blah, blah, blah. So we delay. Those are all just forms of writer's block that I would call procrastination. And this image, to me, represents the kind of feeling of that after you've procrastinated for a long time. It's just this kind of evil that pervades me when I know I've been procrastinating. Ooh, let the procrastination flow through you. Good, good. Only it's not good at all. It feels bad, but I just love that image because that's kind of how I experience. If I'm putting off some writing, delaying and diverting, it starts to just feel kind of icky inside. The other form of writer's block I would call is just feeling speechless, or like you don't know what to write and you're stressed about that. You feel stupefied, or you feel like you're stupid, even though you think you're supposed to be an expert. And how this looks is, I'm a loser, right? I can't even write a sentence that makes sense, or you're second guessing yourself every single sentence because you're worried that other people are going to think you're a loser because of your writing, and you're going to be at their mercy once your writing gets out there. So to me, all writer's block just boils down to these two things, these two experiences. Procrastination looks like this sometimes, you being a child and pretending like you're a child and not an adult in charge of your life. When will I ever get to it, and crying and things like that, and having that experience of being out of control or not having control of when you get to write or not. This is what speechlessness looks like, or the stupidity. It's the fear of being found out, wondering and being afraid if your writing really matters, being afraid of being exposed, because once you actually write, your ideas are out there to be critiqued. That's the most dangerous thing about writing. Essentially what Erica Young says is exactly what I've been talking about, is that these are psychological problems. The blocks stem from the fear of being judged. And if you imagine a world listening, you'll never write a line. And so I love this advice of hers about needing privacy for that first draft. You just shouldn't show the first draft to anyone. So my first surefire strategy for making your way through writer's block is to do some brainstorming, barfing, and dumping. One of the three. Another way we refer to this in writing studies is doing free writing, automatic writing, turning off that critical editor, and just setting a timer. So I literally, with the people who came to my retreats or whenever I'm doing writing workshops, I set a timer for 15 minutes, 15 minutes. I give them a writing prompt and I say, do not stop writing. I even sometimes have them turn off the actual computer screen so that they cannot do any kind of editing going backwards. And I tell them to go forward, go forward, go forward. And even if you can't think of something, right, I can't think of something, I can't think of something, I can't think of something, you want to get that flow. If you get nothing else out of this webinar than what Lawrence Block, who's an American crime writer, says, and other writers have said this in many different places, this is what I want you to get out of this webinar. One thing that helps is to give myself or yourself permission to write badly. That is the answer, the primary, the foundational answer to getting over writer's block and to get started. Can you relate to that?
You know what, Laura, I can. You would not believe how many people come to me for publishing. You know, they're looking, they're in the beginning stages, and they'll tell me they've been writing this book for 5 years and they're not past chapter 1. And that's always my advice, is to sit down and write the whole thing and then go back and worry about it. And you know what's really fun about that is when I do that, I can actually see days where I've written where I'm like, oh my God, I should win a Pulitzer Prize. This
Right.
Awesome. Right. And then there are other days where I can see like, oh my gosh, I had giant brain farts.
Yeah. And you'll get both, and you won't get anything if you don't just allow yourself to write badly and to write automatically and to write through. This is counterintuitive, and it's very difficult for people who are perfectionistic like me, who are overthinking things like me, who have a Ph.D. in English like me. Okay? So the more you know, sometimes the worse it can be too. So what you have to keep doing and practicing, this is a practice, this is part of a writing practice and a writing habit, is to be willing to write badly. And none of that writing has to get out anywhere else besides your own, drawer, your own drive, or the people that you trust to give you constructive and helpful feedback. And I am going to suggest that you do that.
Yeah, Laura, can I just add here? I know you missed our last mastermind for Authorpreneur, but
Hmm.
we spend our mastermind on the inner game portion of
Hmm.
writing and platform building and publishing. And last week was all about how perfection hurts all of this from moving forward. And
Yeah.
you know, when you see yourself in that perfection zone, start sitting down and journaling and seeing what that's really all about. When
Hmm.
I was doing it and I journal, I found out that mine was about overwhelm because I was just trying to do too much at once. So,
Hmm.
you know, if you can really identify where that perfection's coming from, you obviously know that that's something that you do.
Yeah, I love that. And that is another strategy that you just suggested. So I'm writing it down, Juliet, is writing about the writing. We call that meta writing, right?
Oh,
Journaling.
okay.
You're writing about the writing and you're discovering something. And in that discovery, it can free you up in another area of writing. That's what you just suggested. And it's brilliant.
It,
So journal about what's keeping you from writing.
Yeah, you know, I
Or
know you've written a couple books and I have as well.
Mhm.
Every book, the reason I suggest that is every book you're going to find, at least I did, is a journey.
Mhm.
You're not only writing it for that public consumption,
Yeah.
you're going through an inner journey of your own at the same time, whether that is, okay, I need to get through my visibility issues, I need to get through
Mhm.
my overwhelm, whatever
Yeah.
it is, you're going to take a personal lesson away from that writing.
That's right. And there will be things learned. And that's what writing is also, is learning. It doesn't matter how expert you are or how much you think you know about your topic, you will learn by writing about it. So it's a journey. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as well. So, and Ernest Hemingway was one of the great and is one of the great revisers. All writers who really consider themselves writers, and I consider if you're on this webinar or listening to this, you are a writer. And those who are professional and get paid for it, they know that writing is rewriting. The first draft is, as you see Hemingway say,
You can say
shite,
it.
shite. Okay. Just to reinforce this a little bit more, Gene Perret, he actually was a comedy writer for Bob Hope. And, you know, comedy writers have to get things out. And he was interviewed in Psychology Today. And he also says that writer's block is based in fear, the fear that you won't be able to interest publishers in your writing, whatever, you know, that is readers, fear that it won't be good enough, fear that others won't like it, and so on. And his point is that none of that is reality. They're all suppositions. They're all you just throwing yourself forward into the future that's not even present. It's my mother's advice. You're crossing a bridge before you even get to it. And you're imagining there's this ogre on the other end of the bridge too. And you may be doing that as much consciously as unconsciously. You may not even be aware of how much fear is getting in your way. You're thinking that it's something else when at its very base and foundation is fear. And fear is okay. That's what it is to be a human being. It's like one of those primary emotions, and it's understandable. So I say that the number one reason that you don't get to writing or you have writer's block is that you're afraid of either being criticized or ignored. One of the two, right? Like your writing doesn't matter, or somebody reads it and they say something nasty about it.
Mhm.
And who wouldn't then be afraid of writing? Like, oh, you didn't even want to read it? And the anticipation of that would have you just stay stuck, have you delaying, diverting, and distracting yourself for fear of being ignored.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to write something and I'm going to put in a lot of work on something and nobody even is going to care to read it.
Yeah.
Or the opposite, they're going to really be interested and really be hard on you. So knowing all of that, what do? I love this writing character in Pignol's novel. Yes, I felt very small. The typewriter seemed larger than piano. I was less than a molecule. What could I do? I drank more. Now, of course, That is not the answer. But you might bring some little libation of your choice along to help. And, this is what I want to reinforce one more time, is that you're not alone. This happens to every creative person, every writer, in every discipline. I found out more about this actually this summer when I was talking with my friend who is a visual landscape artist and graphic designer, and she talked about her own artist's block, and that this is very common among artists also. And so I was thinking that painting or sculpture was somehow different from writing, and that they would it's easy for them because they can just slap some stuff on them, their palette there, and voila, they have a painting. No, that it's part of the creative process to have that fear and misgiving, even when you're very practiced. Now, when you're doing this on an ongoing basis, just like Juliet says, it doesn't menace her as much anymore. But and that's because she's developed a writing process, she has more confidence. But I can tell you, I constantly am writing, and I am constantly coming up against being stuck in one way or another. So I actually have to use all of these strategies for myself. This is not something that I'm telling you to do because I have somehow overcome writer's block. I have a very busy life. I'm always editing for somebody else. I'm always writing for somebody else, and I'm always delaying my own writing. So I have to do certain things that I'm going to share with you to get to that writing. And that's what I would call the procrastination type of writer's block, the one that makes you feel icky inside because you're not getting to your writing and you should. Or you want to. So Malcolm Gladwell, I love this. I found this, he says, I deal with writer's block by lowering my expectations. This ties in with the be willing to write badly. He says, I think the trouble starts when you sit down to write and imagine that you will achieve something magical and magnificent. And when you don't, panic sets in. The solution is never to sit down and imagine that you will achieve something magical and magnificent. I write a little bit almost every day, and if it results in 2 or 3, or on a good day, 4 good paragraphs, I consider myself a lucky man. Now that's pretty amazing coming from somebody who I think we all consider in that genius level. And I went just out on the internet to look at the number of books and the kind of writing that Malcolm Gladwell did. And I know you can't see this quite, but the tipping point blink. He's he's kind of a hot writer right now, and a very smart man. Talks about the 10,000 hours it takes to become an expert, that makes you an expert. And I thought that sticks with me. And I was actually kind of horrified by this. He was born the same year I was, so he's my age, and I have not written these many books. So I'm getting paranoia there. But if Malcolm Gladwell writes all these books in the way that he does, look at this. Never try to be the hare, all hail the tortoise. You want to listen to that, right? So the surefire strategy number 2 is you want to pace yourself. I love this too. Don't you love the tortoise going, you're going down.
You're going down.
So we may, as writers, want to get it like the hare, done fast. And one of my pet peeves is that there are programs that say write a book in a weekend, or, write fast, that you can get this done really fast and easily. And I think that there are ways to get writing done faster and easier, but good writing takes time. It does. And so what I'm suggesting, and Gladwell is suggesting, is that you do a little mediocre writing every day. And think of yourself as doing a little mediocre writing every day, or however you would say that. And that slow and steady will win the race. I'm using these cliches with you today, right? Don't cross that bridge before you get to it. Slow and steady. But I give a formula to my writers and myself that is very helpful, at least if you follow it, and you will get a 45,000 word book out of it. So 750 words a day is about 3 double-spaced typed pages. If you were to do that 5 days per week for 12 weeks. And that's a little less than 3 months. 3 months is actually always 13 weeks, as my very smart friend Martha taught me recently. I was thinking 3 months was 12 weeks, but it's actually a quarter and it's 13 weeks. This is why I have a PhD in English and not in math. Anyway, I worked this out, and a good sized book actually is between 45, 50,000 words. That's actually a really substantial book. And after that amount of time, that's why I say you can write a book in 3 months. You can write the draft of it, a very good draft, if you do slow and steady and pace yourself like that. Okay. So I am, at the end of this, I have actually a blueprint for writing your book in 90 days that people can get from me if they just email me, and I'll email them, or you can visit my website and you can sign up for my list and get it. This is the manageable plan for eating the elephant that I give you. Content dump, create an outline, decide on an end goal for when you want to finish your book, and then divide your writing up into 500,000 word chunks. And then I give you that formula in this blueprint. So it's something to follow up here. But so you just imagine you're eating an elephant, or you're being the tortoise, not the hare. And the only way to eat an elephant is one piece at a time, slow and steady, be the tortoise. Okay. So now I want to talk just a little bit about my retreat, and I'll tell you why, because I believe this is one surefire strategy to get unstuck, is to go and attend a retreat. So this is a really cool picture that one of the husband of one of the participants took of the barn. And if you notice, you can see, I don't know, can you see my cursor? This is actually a barn in a barn. So this is my great-grandfather, Thomas Alma Moulton's barn. It's very famous. You've probably seen it. I don't know how well you can see it. But this is a picture that my great uncle, his son, put up inside of my great uncle's barn, which is where we wrote. And this barn that we're writing in is right near this barn, which is now part of Grand Teton National Park. And it's an extraordinary place. So this is me here leading my writers this summer in the writing retreat. And this is where Juliet came. This is an old washer we're using to hold the new technology, to hold the old technology. That's the projector on top of there. And then another perspective. So here we are in the barn doing some kind of exercise and writing. So, and some of these pictures are done by my grandma. So it's a very special place to me. I believe that going to a beautiful place like this is outdoors. These are the Grand Tetons. So my grandfather's barn is over here, and it actually, the Tetons are right behind it. It's very famously taken pictures of because the Tetons repeat the peak of the barn behind it. So photographers love it. Landscape artists love it. And these are the Moulton barn cabins, or the Moulton Ranch cabins that we stay in. So I'm bringing this up because I think one of the surest fire strategies you can do for getting unstuck is to change your environment. Now, if you have the opportunity to pull yourself completely out of your very busy life, and we all have busy lives, and go to an outdoor retreat, it can be the most inspiring, motivating, jump-starting ways to get your writing done and to get it started. I don't ever promise somebody that they'll get their book finished in a weekend, but they will get a great start on it. And they'll get, essentially, I say, a month's worth of writing, because we're actually writing all the time. And, you can't write all the time in your real life. So there is value in changing your environment and taking yourself out of those distractions that are not good distractions. I actually get a lot of writing done in an airport too, which seems weird, but if I'm traveling, I can write in an airport. I prefer to be in the silence and quiet of my office. There's something that the brain has to do to shut out those people that helps me and that allows me to write. So I can write in airports, and you have to kind of experiment with this. I also move to my couch so that I don't feel like I'm at work, and I move to my bed sometimes because I have a laptop and I can. And it can make a huge difference. Like, I'm treating myself. I'm not sitting at my desk. Juliet, do you do any of these strategies? Do you write
I
in various places?
actually, I do some of my best work. I grab my computer when I get up on Sunday mornings, and that's the only day I lounge. And that's usually when I write my blogs.
Uh-huh.
My content calendar together is in bed on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Airports, I'm pretty good at writing in airports too. That's one of mine. I have to tell you, when I was at the retreat in the Grand Tetons,
Mm-hmm.
I was so inspired. I wrote all the scripts for my author breakthrough experience and
Oh,
recorded them while I was there, because it was quiet, it was
yeah.
beautiful, it was it was
This was your time for yourself and for your writing, and you
yeah.
made time for yourself to do that. Yeah. So I really actually, I would encourage anyone to take advantage of that. I found this also great blog by the Pink Bookworm. She doesn't actually, I couldn't find her name anywhere, but she talks about 5 reasons you should write in a coffee shop. And I think for anyone, it's not just a millennial kind of thing. I think for me, as a middle-aged writer, I think of it as kind of what millennials do, is go to coffee shops. At least that is so here in Phoenix. We have some cool coffee shops. And I go to Starbucks and things like that. But if you're getting stuck at all, you might treat yourself. She says it's the atmosphere, there's company. Yes, sometimes it feels lonely as a writer. And if you can even just get out where there are other people. Now, some people like that feeling of solitariness, but I'm suggesting that you want to change things up. When you're stuck, change things up. And she says, she talks about the limits, and she's meaning limiting distractions at home. Of course, there are distractions in the coffee shop, but if you don't know anybody, really, it's kind of an anonymous space, but you're still with people. And again, to me, my brain has to do things that it doesn't have to do at home, but it actually likes it. I can't describe it, but when I'm writing in a coffee shop, maybe because I'm gregarious, but I also like to be, but I actually consider myself an introvert. I get to be with people, but not, right?
Right.
It's just, and then she says, you get the coffee, you get the treat
Yeah.
so I like those suggestions.
Can I add something there too?
Yes, please.
I love going to places like that, and restaurants, and even just malls and sitting, because one of my biggest challenges as a writer
Mm-hmm.
is being able to take that leap from show, not tell,
Yes.
which I think so many writers have that as their big problem to overcome. I love sitting there, even when I'm not writing, just taking notes about the mannerisms of people, about the noises I hear, about just the things I see, because it helps me transition. How would I describe that without saying, oh, that person's 5'10", blonde hair, blue eyes, and 110 pounds?
Yeah, because you have to be specific to show, but that's kind of, you're actually doing research on your writing by observing people and getting insight into your 5 senses. The 5 senses that are at work on you is which I tell people. If you want to show, not tell, you want to appeal to your reader's 5 senses: sight, smell, hearing, sound. And by you, it's such a great suggestion, Juliet, by you actually going into any environment and observing people, it can trigger memories of stories that you want to tell, or how to describe them, or how you might create them. And if you're a fiction writer, there's all sorts of ways you can use that material. So that's awesome. And that's what I'm saying. Go to a public space, or go to a place where there are other writers and someone like me facilitating that experience for you, and treat yourself. You deserve it, and your writing is that important. And take the time, make the time for it, because you're the only one who will do it. You have to be the adult, not that baby crying, and make time for yourself. So as you recall, at the beginning of this webinar, I had these statements, and these statements actually came from the participants in my retreat this year. At the end, when I asked them why they came to the retreat and what they got. So they actually had said these things, and I wrote them out. They wanted, they hadn't been making time to write. They wanted to get clear and get over the getting started hurdle. They needed momentum. People had been telling them, one person in particular said, my friend tells me I should tell my story, and needed to learn how to move forward. So these are the people, and by the way, they have given me permission to use what they say and their images in talking about my retreats. And I just love this picture of them. I just love them and each one of their books. And I can tell you stories about each one and their particular stuckness. Mookie has not done a lot of writing, and she's an amazing person. She's writing her autobiography. She comes from Australia, and she's a fascinating person in this wonderful accent too, of course. And there's Sharon here. Diane is the artist. But Mookie just found out writing was so easy for her too. She just didn't do a lot of writing, and now writing is coming easy, and she's literally waking up every morning and writing immediately before she gets even out of bed. And she's just generating and generating and generating. And so she had this breakthrough of, oh, it's not as hard as I thought it was going to be. So, and I think that that's true about writing. I think it's more hard than people think it is. And I think it's actually easier. I think it's both. And there are reasons for that, which I won't get into a lot of this, a little bit in a moment. But Karen, one of her challenges is she's a very, very busy professional with a counseling business, a business in which people need her and rely on her, and she has to be on call all the time. So it's a challenge to get to the writing, and she has some really, really important stories to tell. And I could go through and tell you all their stories, but I won't. One person, though, that I do want, and I'll see if this works, is Barb Holland. She's the one, let's see, right here. Barb is writing a book about energy work and healing, and different types of healing modalities. So I wanted you to just listen to her. This is raw video, and we'll see if this works and is loud enough. And it's very, very brief. So you'll hear, and you'll see a cat at the bottom, and that's distracting, and you'll hear this person talking and asking your questions.
Wow, what a gift. Within the first 3 hours, the first day, I now have several tools to get me unstuck when I'm trying to write.
That's a cool soundbite. Now let's do something different. When you were thinking about coming, what kind of got you over the hurdle?
I knew I had to keep trying different things, looking for answers to get this book written. I knew I wouldn't be able to do it on my own, and I required a coach, a program, a retreat, any or all of those things to keep me moving.
That's another great.
So if you didn't hear exactly what she said, these are the kinds of things, she got strategies for getting unstuck, and she knew she needed a program for that. So I was really pleased at what people got in terms of getting unstuck, and that made a huge difference. I don't know how many of you know Gloria Anzaldúa. She's a brilliant writer, does some amazing fiction, nonfiction, poetry, everything. But she thinks that writing is so important that she suggests that you write in the kitchen, lock yourself up in the bathroom, write on the bus or the welfare line, on the job, or during meals. She just anywhere, write. Writing is important, okay? So change your environment, and this gets into, I think, a little bit even more serious, even though that doesn't necessarily communicate. I know that she's saying that because she knows that there are writers who are sometimes unfulfilled, unfulfilled as writers. They don't get the opportunity to write. And so she's saying, you have something important to say, just write wherever you are. I want to take just a pause for a moment and ask people to think about why they do want to write. I think I want to write because I want to share my message and expand my reach, and I'm sure other people do too. That's what writing is all about, is getting your message out there. I want people to be able to see me as an authority, understand and know me as a credible, respectable person who has something valuable to say. It also gives me the opportunity to get myself out there so that clients and potential clients see me. I get more speaking opportunities from it, and I'm actually copywriting my intellectual property when I write, and potentially creating new streams of revenue, which is what Juliet is good at helping and teaching people to do as you build your author platform. I also have people who write memoirs and autobiographies, and it's a genre that's very dear to my heart. And people do this. Why? Because they want to leave a legacy for whoever that might be, their children, their grandchildren, or even just their ideal readers. I don't have any children or grandchildren. I have children in my life, but there are people that I want to impact, and it gives me an opportunity to reflect on my life experience, on important people, places, and events. And ultimately, for many, many people, writing a book or just plain writing and being published is a dream. So it's something I encourage you to do and find a way to get unstuck. James Baldwin also says writing is a political instrument, and that is one reason that I write, because I know that the people who have power in the world they have a voice, and they take and use their voice. And one way to do that is through speaking, one way is through writing, and the two together are, extremely powerful. Why can writing be so difficult and lead to stuckness? This is not the greatest image, and I just kind of pulled this. It's actually talking about teaming, but I thought it actually kind of depicted why writing is complicated, because you're using actually both sides of your brain ongoingly. The left side that's analytical, thinking and developing ideas, the right brain that's creative, you're processing and you're going back and forth like that all the time. You're actually having to anticipate readers and what they need to be understood. When you're in a conversation, like I'm in a conversation with you, Juliet, I can ask you questions, right? Did you understand that? Can you see? But when I send you my writing, I can't follow you around with my writing. That's why we have punctuation, to try to, give what your intonation patterns was, because you can't follow your writing around. So it's actually a very complex task. Writing is. It's very complex. And that's why people need people to read their writing also, to give them feedback about what isn't working. Do you have anything to say about that, Juliet? Anything?
Well, yeah, I think a really great example of that is texting. How many times have you read a text and, I'm very direct and to the point, and sometimes people will be like, why are you mad?
Yeah. And you're like, no,
I'm texting, and I want to use as few words as possible. A great example is that my mother used to text me. She learned how to text, and she used to text me in caps. And my daughter would pick up the phone and go, why is Grandma yelling at you?
Yeah. I know. I think some people write. I've caught some people writing in caps because I think they're afraid of both the punctuation and getting the spelling right, or not knowing what should or shouldn't be capitalized. And so to just capitalize it all, then they don't have to make any decisions. I don't know. But definitely it's a no-no to do in all caps, because it looks like you're screaming. And that's why the exclamation point. And texting is a more casual form of writing. But if you don't anticipate how it works, or if autocorrect creates something weird, right? There's all sorts of examples of weirdness. But I just want everybody to get that what you're doing is a very complex task, actually. So no wonder you're getting stuck. This is like saying, I'm going to solve an engineering problem, literally. We may think it's simple because we can all write. If we can write, what is it? I'm forgetting the word. What is it when you can write and read? What do we call that?
Literacy?
Yeah, being literate. Hello.
Is speaking included in that?
Exactly. Thank you for the word. So if you're literate, then you can write, but it's not just simply just writing out words, right? Ian Forster and other people have said similar things like this. How do I know what I think until I see what I have to say? Thinking is writing. Writing is thinking. Writing is discovery. That's what you were talking about too, Juliet, earlier, that it's a journey that you're on. That's why it's so challenging. This is J.K. Rowling thinking through her novel. This is no simple task. She's got a lot of characters, a lot of chapters, a lot of things to remember. She's got to have a plan. It just doesn't come out linear. That's why we say writing is recursive, because you go forward, you plan, you go back, you have to revise and revise, and the best writers are willing to do that repeatedly. John Updike says writing and rewriting are a constant search for what it is one is saying. And to be accurate, to be precise. That's why writing is so challenging and why you can get stuck. And that's why I say that you shouldn't go it alone. And I have a blog out there that I actually did initially write for Juliet, your blog. It was a guest blog, Debunking the Myth of the Lone Writer. Mm-hmm. There is this idea that writing is a solitary act. And certainly a lot of the writing that you'll do is done on your own. And you're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. But I say to people, if you look at any acknowledgments page of any book, you will see a mound of people who helped that person write that book and who had probably a tremendous amount to do with how it looks and how it reads. And so you shouldn't be intimidated by their end product too, because they had a lot of support along the way if they're smart. My dissertation, and that became a book, looks beautiful and really smart and amazing, if I do say so myself. And it's also a really good read because my dissertation advisor, was really rigorous with me about clarity, simplifying. I had become very complex in my language and overeducated in some ways. I was practicing. I'm always practicing my craft. So everybody has an editor. Anybody could use a writing coach or a writing group or a writing partner, and I encourage it. So Surefire strategy number 4 is talk to someone else about your ideas. And I would suggest when you do that, you actually can record the conversation. I'm recording this webinar because this is going to become part of my book, actually. I'm going to transcribe this. And what I'm sharing with you is going to become part of that. And this is a way for me to content dump. It's one strategy I use. Clue. This is me working with Mookie on a VIP day right at the end of the workshop. So she had gotten unstuck and was really excited and wanted more individualized attention. And we spent 3 hours and outlined her entire autobiography. She had started the outline and went through. And I was the one listening and pulling out ideas. And what you need is someone to ask you questions, listen, and take notes. Now, people have varying degrees of skill at that. I happen to be very skilled at that. Juliet's very skilled at that. But even having just a friend, a sympathetic friend, to listen and talk your ideas out can make a huge difference. And then you can reciprocate that. But ask them to take notes, record it, and then use that content for your book or for your blog, whatever. If you get stuck, call somebody. Who are you going to call? Writing Buster. Your friend's Writing Buster. I need to find a better thing than that. But really, it's like, who are you going to call? Who do I call? I call my twin sister, actually, too. I trust her. So why do you still put off writing? This is what I think. There's no real deadline, nothing at stake, no urgency, no accountability, and no risk-taking going on. I love this. This just makes me smile. What matters most in life are quotes and stuff that tell you what life is really about. And here's a picture of a tree. This is that, what really matters? Well, you don't know what really matters. And this is kind of making light of that. But your writing doesn't really matter to you if you don't have an actual deadline. And if you haven't put anything at stake. And there's no urgency. and no accountability that you've put in place, and you're not taking any risks. If you aren't doing any of those things, your book isn't getting written, your blog isn't getting written. If you don't feel like you're losing money by not writing that blog and getting that SEO done, then it's not going to happen. So I do things like this webinar, or I do things like schedule myself for speaking engagements. And I have paid for publishing my book upfront with a publisher. And I've put something at stake. That's what that means. And then I start telling people about it. I start telling people that I'm writing the book. I put it in my signature line, or I put it up on Facebook, or I would recommend that. And that's also how you build your author platform. And that's what Juliet does, is that you say, my forthcoming book or my upcoming book. That's you making something public. That's you saying, this really matters in my life. I really am valuable enough to have my voice be heard. I matter, and I'm going to do this. And it's a commitment, and it's a risk. So the Surefire strategy number 5 is to be a risk taker. If you never have, you should. These things are fun, and fun is good. Sometimes you may not think it's going to be fun, but these are the things that I encourage you to do, is to put yourself at risk as a writer, and be willing to be with the fear and the chaos and the bad writing and all of that. Set a deadline in the future. I have a deadline of the Friday before Thanksgiving to finish my book about writing, to finish the manuscript, the draft manuscript of it. And I've been doing things like gather content, doing things like this, having transcribed. I'm still in the invention stage of my book about writing, and I'm getting clearer and clearer about it as I go, and feeling more and more empowered about it. But I've set a deadline, and then you create that timeline backwards. What are my milestone goals? And I'm putting myself at risk just saying that on this public space, right? And I've told my clients I'm writing this book. They're going to hold me to it. Okay, that's being accountable. That's putting yourself at risk. Anne Frank says, I can shake off everything as I write. My sorrows disappear. My courage is reborn. And her book, her diary, of course, made a huge impact in people's lives, because she dared to write, and then someone took the time to get it published and out there. And millions and millions and millions of people have been inspired and impacted what she had to say. And she didn't know that her writing would make that much difference in the world. And I would say, many people do not understand, or you may not understand, how much your writing can make a difference for other people who identify with you and who can benefit from your experience and your expertise. And I encourage you to write, to get through the procrastination and the putting off. So this is just a summary of the Surefire strategies for getting unstuck. You got to be willing to write a lot of bad and private writing at first. You want to pace yourself, go slow and steady. All hail the tortoise. You could just put a tortoise picture up next to your computer. Consider changing your environment. Consider going on something like a writing retreat. And I have one, by the way, coming up, and we'll have another one in Wyoming. I'm just in the beginning stages of planning one here in Arizona. I'm really excited about it. And really excited about doing retreats, because I know they benefit me in multiple ways. And then talk to other people, commit publicly, and be willing to take a risk. So your unique experience and skills and perspective really does matter. Your writing, even though there are lots of books about how to write, I'm writing my own book about how to write based on my experience, and it will be unique to me because I am unique, and your book will be unique to you regardless of the number of other books like it out in the world. I often use the analogy of Mexican restaurants. So I live here in the Southwest, right? And there are a lot of Mexican restaurants, as you can imagine, here. And someone might say, I can't open up a Mexican restaurant here. There are a ton of Mexican restaurants here. Just like I can't write a book about writing. There are a ton of books about writing. If you go on Amazon.com, you'll see a ton of them. Well, my Mexican restaurant and my book about writing is different from other Mexican restaurants, and I'm going to make sure my Mexican restaurant is one that you come back to and you want to eat at, and we'll get a reputation and we'll be of value to someone. And you can create, there can be many, many Mexican restaurants in the world that will make a difference for people, because people live in different places and, you know, encounter your writing in different places. So I encourage you to have confidence in your own rare experience, skills, and perspective, and to just get writing, whether it's a blog, a book, or other piece of writing. So if you want to connect with me, I offer free Get Writing strategy sessions, and you can sign up with me for that if you send me an email at laurabushphd.com. I also, if you go to my website, laurabushphd.com, I have a scheduling link, so you can just schedule a 30-minute or 45-minute Getting Writing strategy session. You have a choice there, whatever you would like. And I will help you think through your book. And if there's anything else that I can do to help you, and would be glad to do that. So I hope that was helpful. And I wish you all good luck on writing your books. Do you have anything to add, Juliet?
No, that was great. Amazing information. Thank you so much for coming by and sharing that. I'm not sure, does anybody have any questions? Not hearing any questions. Okay, I always have such a silent crowd. Okay. Well, thank you for stopping by, and I will get this over to you, and have a great day.
Thank you for the opportunity, Juliet. I had a great time, and I'm going to use it in multiple ways myself.
Good.